Chapter 3. Justin pulled up to the rental office and sighed. The place appeared bland and tiny. He had no idea why Peter had gone with this place. Maybe it had once looked better? But what choice did he have? At least it was paid for. One of those annoying bells jingled, announcing his arrival as he opened the door. An elderly woman, probably in her 70s, looked up at him.
"Welcome, dearie. I'll be right with you."
Oh, great. Not only was the place minuscule, but one little old lady ran it. What would the cabin look like? Probably run down and in need of repairs. He doubted a woman her age could keep up with landlord demands. Justin rolled his eyes. This place might have been great years ago when Peter met his wife, but Justin doubted it would look the same now.
"All right, dearie. Sorry about that. Come have a seat and tell me how I can help you."
My name is Justin Miller. I believe my boss, Peter, rented me a cabin for the week. The woman looked up in surprise.
"Miller? You're English, then?"
What an odd question. What did his background have to do with renting a cabin? Yes, I guess. Does that matter? She tilted her head up and glanced at the ceiling. Justin followed her gaze but saw nothing there. Great. She was crazy, too.
"No, I suppose it doesn't," she said after a minute. "He's up for the challenge."
He? Justin glanced around the room just to make sure he hadn't missed anything, but the second glance revealed the same thing the first had, a tiny room with no hidden doors.
"My boss,"
she stated, as if that explained it all.
"Here's your contract, dearie. Sign at the bottom and I can get you the key."
Right. Justin didn't bother to read the contract. Peter was paying for it anyway. He finished his signature with a flourish and handed the paper back to the elderly woman. She scanned it and flashed a large smile.
"Here's your key and a map to the cottage."
I doubt I need a map.
"It's a little tricky to get there, so take it just in case. And be sure and watch for the signs."
I think I can handle it, Justin said as he took the key and the map from her. He shook his head as he left the rental office and walked back to his car. That had been an odd experience, to say the least. He climbed inside and tossed the key and the map on the passenger seat. Justin doubted he would need the map, but the woman, he hadn't even gotten her name, had been rather insistent that he took it. As he started the car, Justin hoped the rest of his trip would be less weird. If it wasn't, Peter definitely owed him. Half an hour and 3 missed turns later, Justin pulled up in front of the cottage, surprised to see another car parked there. Perhaps it was the cleaning crew or something. He couldn't imagine anyone would find this place by accident. He shook his head as he stepped out of the car. Someone should tell that woman at the rental office to make those signs larger, as he'd missed every one of them the first time. Of course, he probably could have been paying closer attention, but that was beside the point. He grabbed his bag from the trunk and slugged his way to the front door. Suitcases with wheels and sandy beaches went together about as well as peanut butter and catfish. At least the view was nice. The cabin itself wasn't much to look at, but the expansive ocean to the left of it took his breath away. Justin felt the tension easing off his shoulders with each gentle lap of the waves on the beach just feet away. And to the right, a hammock swung lazily back and forth in the breeze. He would definitely be spending some quality time there. He turned the handle, expecting to find it locked, but the front door swung open. That seemed rather trusting of the rental company. Weren't they afraid someone would come in and steal things? But the place was secluded. Maybe they left it unlocked because no one would ever find it without a map. Or perhaps the cleaning crew left it unlocked while they cleaned. Justin shut the door behind him and took in the room. Or maybe it was unlocked because there was nothing here to steal, he thought with a sigh. The simple room bordered on being drab. Nothing sat atop the fireplace mantel. Only a few pieces of artwork hung around the room, and even the bookshelf held slim pickings. Worn furniture completed the room. Yep, that hammock was looking better by the minute. Justin left his suitcase by the door and continued farther in. A kitchen appeared on his left, nothing fancy but usable. He opened a cabinet door, surprised to find food inside. Peter hadn't told him he needed to bring his own food, but he'd brought a few things just in case. It was nice of the company to stock food, but he wondered if this was for him or left from the previous guest. A glance in the fridge revealed fresh milk and a case of Code Red Mountain Dew, his favorite drink. He had no idea how they knew about that, but he didn't care. A cold beverage sounded perfect right now. He swiped one from the cardboard box, popped the lid, and took a satisfying swig before continuing down the hallway. There were only 2 more doors, which meant either 2 bedrooms or perhaps 1 bedroom and a bathroom, though he rather hoped it was the former. It wouldn't really matter since he was the only one here, but he hated having to leave the comfort of his bedroom to use the bathroom. As he pushed open the door of the first room, the sound of running water carried out. The cleaning crew must be working in the bathroom. He stepped inside and the sound stopped. Had he imagined it? A floorboard creaked. No, someone was definitely in the bathroom. His eyes darted around the room for something he could use as a weapon in case it wasn't the cleaning staff. But there was nothing. The room was sparsely furnished, just a bed and a dresser. But what his eyes did land on was the suitcase. It was definitely not his suitcase. He'd left his by the door, and it was black, not the bright purple color staring back at him. So then whose suitcase was it? The feminine scream gave him only a second to respond before a crazed wet creature in a towel flew at him. Ava's shrill scream echoed in her ears as she lunged across the room at the intruder. Who was he? And how had he gotten in? She had no idea how she managed to keep her towel on as her hands curled into fists and rained down on the man. The drink in his hand, her Mountain Dew, went flying as he defended himself. He grabbed her hands and quickly pinned her wrists, stopping her punches. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my cottage?" His gruff voice matched the strength in his hands. "Your cottage?" She struggled to get her hands free, but his grip held firm. "This is my cottage, at least for the next week. Now will you let go of me?" "Do you promise to stop hitting me?" "Stop hitting you? You're a strange man in my bedroom. I think I have every right to defend myself." But even as she said the words, her fear lessened. He didn't seem dangerous. Stiff, perhaps, if his hair was any indication. But he'd made no move to attack her, and he was clearly stronger than she was. Struggling would only wear her out. "There's obviously been a mistake, and we can figure it out, but only if you calm down." Ava nodded, but kept her guard up as she dropped her hands. "Okay, I'm calm, but you're still in the wrong cottage. I have a rental agreement that says I have this place." The man held up his hand in a surrendering posture. "So do I. Look, why don't you get dressed and then come out to the kitchen? We can figure out what happened then." Ava narrowed her eyes at him. "Fine, but don't touch my stuff." She eyed the can that was slowly pouring liquid on the floor. "Or any more of my food." He followed her gaze and then bent down and picked up the can. "I'll find a towel to clean the floor." "Don't bother," she said. "I'll use this one after I'm dressed." His eyes dropped to her towel and Ava's face grew hot. Way to pull attention to the fact that only a small piece of cloth was keeping her covered. "Right." He cleared his throat. "I'll just be..." He pointed awkwardly at the door before turning and darting out to the hallway. With the door shut and locked, Ava quickly finished drying and dressed. Even though the weather was warm, she tugged on her most modest shirt and shorts. She didn't think he was dangerous, but there was no need to go tempting fate either. She dropped the towel on the red puddle and wiped it up, and then deposited the towel in the laundry hamper on her way out the door. As she neared the kitchen, she pulled back her shoulders, putting on a brave exterior. She was a strong, independent, assertive woman, and he was clearly in the wrong place. He sat at the small table, his phone in his hand, but he stood when she entered. "Tea?" she asked before he could say anything. The situation was uncomfortable as it was, but sitting across from the stranger with nothing to occupy her hands sounded like torture. "Do you have any coffee?" "There's a pot." She pointed to the contraption on the counter. "But I don't drink the stuff, and I didn't bring any." "Tea's fine," he conceded and sat back down. Ava filled the kettle in the sink and then turned the burner on before rummaging in the cabinets. She brought down 2 mugs and pulled out 2 tea bags from the stash she had brought, placing one in each mug. She was thankful that she had something to keep her hands occupied and a reason not to be looking at him. When the kettle whistled, she finally turned to him. "Do you take anything in it?" "Cream and sugar, I guess," he answered. "I'm not really much of a tea guy." Ava nodded, unsurprised by this declaration, and opened the fridge. She retrieved the cream and set it on the table next to the sugar. Then she grabbed the mugs. "So, what are we going to do about this?" She kept her tone even, though her hand shook slightly as she lifted her mug. "I suppose we should check the rental agreements and find out which one of us is in the wrong place." Ava did not miss the condescension in his voice. He obviously had money, or wanted people to believe he did. His manicured hands, perfectly coiffed hair, and designer shirt did not go unnoticed. "Uh-huh. Well, I have mine, and I can assure you that I'm in the right place. I followed Margie's map to a T." He pushed his chair back. "I have mine as well. I'll just grab it, and we can put this to rest." He strode out of the room with a purposeful gait and returned a moment later with a single sheet of paper in hand. With an exaggerated flourish, he placed the paper on the table in front of her. She picked it up, expecting to find something wrong. The date, the name of the cottage, something. But there was nothing off. His paper looked exactly like hers. "But I don't—" "Oh, no." She shook her head in disbelief. What were the odds? "Oh, no, what?" he asked as he sat again. Ava sighed and ran a hand across the bridge of her nose. "Did you read the contract?" The man shrugged. "I skimmed it." "Of course you did." A judgmental edge filled her voice, but she didn't care. "There's a clause in the agreement about what happens if they double book the cottage. I asked about it because I thought it was odd, but Margie assured me it rarely happens." "Wait, there's a clause about this? What does it say?" Ava rolled her eyes. Why did people sign things they didn't read? "That we have to give it at least 3 days before asking for a refund." "What?" His eyes widened, making the ocean blue color of them even more prominent. "That's preposterous. They overbooked and they make us wait 3 days for a refund? I don't think so. We should go have a talk with that woman." "Margie. Her name is Margie?" "I don't care what her name is." His hand splayed across the table, large and tan. Ava wondered if the color was natural or from a bottle. She could never tan. Her father's Scottish genes ran too strong in her pale skin, but every time she tried tanner from a bottle, it left her orange and streaky. She'd given up years ago. "I'm not sharing the space for 3 days with a crazy woman I don't even know. No offense." He added the last 2 words quickly, as if they could erase the harsh words he had spewed at her just before them. Ava prickled and leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Whether it was conscious or not, she enjoyed the added distance the movement brought. She generally prided herself on keeping a cool head, but this man managed to hit all her buttons. "First of all, I am not crazy. You were in my bedroom. I had every right to attack you. And this is not my idea of fun either. I came here to work, and I need peace and quiet." They locked gazes, almost as if engaging in an unspoken game of chicken. Whoever spoke first would show their weakness, and Ava had decided it wasn't going to be her. She didn't know who this perfect plastic man was, but she wasn't about to let him steamroll her. "Fine," he said finally. "Get your agreement, and let's go see if anything can be done."